everyone. Well, we are back for our final review of Ted Lasso, doing episodes 8, 9, and 10. I am the Outlaw John Rocha here on the Outlaw Nation channel with another review for you. Joined, as always, throughout this whole season and for a number of reviews recently by my fellow geek buddy over there, Shannon McClung. How are you, Shannon?
Johnny, I feel like we just saw each other 15 minutes ago.
Well, that's what it feels like when you're a member of the Diamond Dogs. It just feels like you get together whenever you want, and it feels like it's only been a few minutes. Yeah, that's a very good point. We just finished recording our recent Geek Buddies episode, but we had this one scheduled as well to talk about. Well, Shannon, we've done reviews of the first few episodes, then, of course, 4 through 7, and now we're doing 8, 9, and 10 here. The first season wrapped up. For those of you who have been watching Ted Lasso and have been watching our reviews, thank you. This is spoiler, so we're going to talk about 8, 9, and 10 and talk about the entire season overall and how we felt about it. It's already been approved for a second season. What we hope to see, of course, this one stars JASON Sudeikis, Brendan Hunt, Hannah Waddingham, and Brett Goldstein, assorted number of Juno Temple, assorted number of other actors involved in this as well. And we're going to get into all of it brought to you by the creator of the show, Bill Lawrence, with JASON Sudeikis and Brendan Hunt as well. So 8, 9, and 10 kind of wraps up everything here, Shannon. We see more of this relationship developing here between Ted Lasso and his boss. We see more going on with a number of the other characters as well. We see Roy kind of getting closer to Keeley, Roy and Keeley coming closer. As I said, Ted Lasso and Rebecca coming closer. Of course, this is after Ted Lasso has slept with Rebecca's friend the night before. It's where we pick up the beginning of episode 8. Higgins goes through a little bit of an emotional up and down roller coaster over these 3 episodes. He even gets a soul patch thing, which he grows incredibly fast and learns how to play whatever the bass there. Nate becomes a coach. So much happens throughout this. What did you feel about episode 8, 9, and 10 as we ended this first season of Ted Lasso?
I mean, just outstanding. It's just such a good show. It's such a heartwarming show, and it's such a good show. And I'm not talking about quality. I'm talking about the nature of the show. It's just a good show that makes you feel, that gives you some hope right now. And I think a lot of the world, and especially our country, we would like some hope right now. Yeah. And Ted Lasso is the type of show that you can jump in with him for about half an hour and feel a little better about things, whether or not it's just a 30-minute escape, or if his unbridled enthusiasm can actually help you look at the world and think, you know what, we're not done yet. We're down, but we're not out. Right.
That's a great point you bring up, Shannon. I mean, I rewatched 8, 9, and 10 for this review this morning, and it's not like I have a lot of time, but I'd had it on to watch while I was working on a number of things, and I'll be damned if I wasn't kind of constantly being moved over to watch a few scenes or to watch things that I'd remembered during my first pass through this a couple of months ago, or about a month and a half ago, when I first got the episodes. And it was great to revisit these episodes again. And I'll tell you this, I feel like they re-edited or edited some things out that I had seen my first trip through. So when they made them available for press before they released them. So I think there might have been some editing that was done here that really fit into the situation. Like that Proud Boys joke seems quite on target. You know, there were a number of social shots that are taken in the interactions between the characters. So you can tell Bill Lawrence and JASON Sudeikis and Brendan Hunt are, you know, kind of like hitting a few topical issues that they want to hit amidst this very sweet comedy. And we've said this before already about this show, Shannon. That's what's deceptive about this show. It seems like a really fun, surface level, easy, cheesy kind of comedy, but in fact, there's so much more going on emotionally for these characters, and so much more going on in these relationships and in how they negotiate their world as well. And also, there's a soccer team to try to keep, or football team to try to keep from being relegated, which for people who don't know means you get moved down from the top tier to the next tier. 3 teams every season get moved down with the worst records, get moved down from the highest division down to the second highest division, and 3 teams from the second highest division get promoted up until the highest division. So it goes every year, and then same thing as you go down the league. I think there's 5 or 6 divisions of English football, and that happens every year. So this is what AFC Richmond is faced with in the last few episodes of the season. But I also enjoyed, these are characters, Shannon, that you want to spend time with. You want to get to know more. You want to enjoy. They're not just, doling out quips. There's actually real humanity going on in these performances from all of the incredible actors embodying these characters.
Agreed. It'll be really interesting to see what happens next season. I mean, Danny Rojas didn't come in until episode 7?
Yeah, episode 7. He'd been on the injury list.
6 or 7. I mean, and this guy, he has that same positive outlook on things that Ted Lasso does, but he's a completely different guy.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about this writing is a lot of times, and speaking as a writer, and character work is not necessarily my strongest suit. And it's a pitfall to be like, well, you fall into the stereotypes. Well, this is my nice guy. This is my jerk.
Right.
This is my passive guy. It's very easy to fall into that. And a lot of very highly paid writers do it. I mean, you see a lot of shows that come on every fall that go away because they don't necessarily, a lot of times it takes writers a minute to really figure out who these people are. And it seemed like they kind of got Ted and his crew. They got them right away.
Yeah.
I mean, Danny Rojas is just the perfect example that he was in the last 4 episodes of the series, and you cannot wait to see him in season 2.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great point you bring up. Cristo Fernandez is the actor who plays Danny Rojas. He's a Mexican striker that they bring in to the club, and he's just he's got a catchphrase: "Football is life," and he uses it. It's almost like a Groot. Every time he says Groot, it has a different meaning depending on the situation. Football is life has a different meaning depending on the situation. I mean, I remember a couple episodes before 8, 9, and 10, he had that moment with Ted where he looks in the office and goes, "Coach, football is life," and it's just that kind of thing where we had seen him say it so vibrantly. He is saying, I mean, like everything else, football is life, ups and downs. And so throughout this last few episodes, same thing. And Sam kind of takes a little bit of a back seat as Danny kind of moves into being the newer striker and what have you. Sam's storyline gets a little bit sidelined because we've kind of come to terms with the Sam situation, and now he's a full part of the team. And he still gets his, conversations and what have you, but it's become Sam who kind of recedes a little bit into the background as Danny comes a little more to the forefront. Also, we get Anthony Head coming down as Rupert Mannion, who is the former, the former owner. He comes into this as well and is a little more prominent, a personhood, a character in these last 3 episodes. And that scene between him and Ted at the dartboard is one of the best scenes in the entire series. My God, you saw it coming a mile away. But damn if it didn't work because they laid the groundwork, Shannon, throughout the whole series, that just because you think something is supposed to happen a certain way doesn't mean it will happen. And if it does happen that way, there's also other things that happen around it that isn't quite what you predicted. And that's what's the joy of this show. And it's certainly that dart scene reinforced that.
Agreed. I mean, there was actually they kind of edited it in a way I disagreed with.
Oh, okay.
Because when Rupert pulls out his own darts, after Ted has thrown those 3 kind of, average throws, and then Ted's like, "Oh, I forgot, I'm right-handed," or I can't remember which hand it is. But then you cut back, we cut away from them, we cut back to the scene, and Ted is losing, and I'm like, why did you have him do the switch then?
Right.
Because I really feel like it would have, again, we see it coming a mile away. We know what's going to happen as an audience. But I feel like it would have been so much more impactful for Ted to just sort of agree to this match. We cut back, he's getting destroyed, and that's when I forget. It's the Princess Bride move. I know something you don't know. I am not offended.
Not offended. Yeah.
And I mean, still the sequence was great, but I remember watching that with my girlfriend, and I'm like, that's an interesting choice. I don't know why they did that.
Right. Well, I think it worked for me because it showed him trying to one-up Rupert in that moment, because Rupert said, "Oh, I got these darts." He's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not left-handed." Bang, bang. But then he's losing, but then he makes a comeback, right? I mean, it's an underdog story, so it's just like Ted Lasso to have to come back to prove who he is, and in the end gets the victory. But I hear your point, absolutely. What did you think of the storyline with Rupert becoming more of a part of these last 8, 9, and 10 episodes and messing with Rebecca more and leading to Rebecca being discovered and found out by Keeley as being someone who did want to sabotage Ted Lasso at the beginning of the season. So they didn't let her off the hook, man. They really exposed her and had her have these conversations with both Ted Lasso and Keeley and Higgins as well. Mm-hmm. We got a redemption arc for Rebecca, even though we really didn't need it because we kind of started to understand Rebecca. But you forget, she's got these other things to tie up with these characters.
Right. A character always has to deal with the sins of the past, even though they have progressed, they've become a better person. When their sins of the past are not known to the people who view them a certain way, they still have to account for that. So I think bringing Rupert in is a great move. The guy plays a phenomenal dick.
Oh yeah, Anthony Hopkins.
And then just the dogpiling of like his new wife, the new Rebecca is pregnant, like all these things. Right. It's just sort of dogpiling on her. I think going forward, he's obviously going to remain an antagonist.
Yes.
Like, starting with episode 1, we kind of assumed as an audience that this show is going down the major league road.
Right.
And come to find out, like, it is, but she's a much more nuanced character.
Yeah.
She has her motivations for doing what she's doing, and she realizes later that was a mistake.
Right.
So I think bringing him in as the actual big bad, like this is the guy we're actually rooting against right now. He's the only legitimately bad person in the show as of right now.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen in season 2? Maybe we're going to find out a little bit more about Rupert, and it's like, well, yeah, he was a prick. He wasn't always that way. I mean, the same thing happened with Jamie Tartt.
Yeah.
He started as such a dick and almost ended as just a big a dick. But you get to see that little bit of light that's there in the corner, and that hopefully that's going to inform his choices going further. I mean, like in episode 10, I thought, like, oh my God, they did it. They're going to get the tie. They're not going to be relegated. And because they're so busy celebrating, they don't realize Jamie Tartt's darting down to the other end of the field, he makes the extra pass, so he actually did learn a lesson.
Yes,
but then Richmond gets knocked down.
Right.
It was really interesting because Jamie Tartt was such a tough guy. You know what I mean? He was such a bastard the whole time. Right. And then you see how his dad is addressing him, and this is a guy who he has said has been gone for a lot of his life.
Yeah.
And he, I think we view those relationships as the dad's going to be like, come on, Junior, let me back in your life. I've changed. No, this guy is he's railing him like an overzealous parent at a little league game.
Right.
And you see that kid that Jamie was when his dad first left.
Right. The arms folded, the head down, being yelled at by his dad. I mean, and even Ted Lasso has that moment where he sees it happening and he kind of like a little bit shocks. It's almost like a little electricity goes through him, and he doesn't want to open the door because that's between father and son. But he also gains some more sympathy for Jamie. I mean, Jamie the whole time in episode 10 thinks that Ted Lasso's playing mind games with him by being nice to him, because that's how Jamie views the world, because his father has beat into his head that he has to act a certain way or be a certain way, or there people are trying to betray you or take what you have. And so for him,
people are bad.
Yeah, people are bad. So for him being an aloof jerk, that's his way of protecting himself, because he actually is a pretty sensitive kid. I mean, he has that scene with Keeley before they have sex there after a long time, but they have the and he totally like surrenders this vulnerability to Keeley, and explaining how he was raised and what he went through, and also what Keeley taught him. And he still gets the jokes in about the British Museum and all that kind of stuff. It's really funny, but he's learning, he's growing. Once again, the show's gift is taking these characters and putting them on these emotional journeys, and knowing when to bring them to the forefront, knowing when to pull them back, and knowing when to give them really good, powerful, life-changing emotional moments that make you fall in love with the character, or at least appreciate the character more. You get a more fleshed out interpretation of the character, and that is fun. And I'm sure these actors must have loved doing that as well. Giving a shout out to Phil Dunster, who plays Jamie. Even Roy Roy goes on his own journey as well, kind of like Jamie, in that Roy is even more defensive, but for a different reason, because he doesn't want to lose what he's got. Whereas Jamie wants to achieve a certain level of excellence. Roy wants to keep hanging on. So his aloofness, his anger, and then his fear, like, who am I outside of soccer? This is all I know. Football rather. How many people have that in their lives? Who am I if I'm not an actor? Who am I if I'm not a director? Who am I if I'm not a chemist? Who am I if I'm not an electrician, or whatever it is, a politician, whatever it is? What do I do with my life? Jamie, a lot of athletes have to confront that post-athletic world when everyone's through chanting your name. What do you do? And Keeley has that great scene where she brings over his niece and she asks him, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind when you think about Roy? And it's such an awesome moment. And then we see Roy have to confront the end of his career when he has that injury stopping Jamie. So it's such powerful stuff, emotionally resonant stuff happening throughout this show, amidst all the charm of it, which is a gift.
And I definitely want to talk about Keeley for a second.
Yeah, please.
In episode,
Juno Temple. Yep.
In episode 8, where she feels like she has been rebuffed.
Yes.
And Jamie shows up, and this is not like I'm in love with you. It's like, hey, I'm a grown ass woman.
Yeah.
I have a need. This guy fulfills it. And then when she finds out that Roy does like her, he just doesn't know how to communicate the way she communicates, and she fesses up right away.
Yes.
There is, I know I had said she was crass before, but there is just such a sweet innocence to that really shows you this is a good person. Yep. She does not owe him an explanation, but she tells him right off the bat, like, if we're going to do this, here's what you need to know. I didn't think you liked me, so I went and did this.
Right.
And then, that's when, Roy gets to meet up with the Diamond Dogs.
Yeah, the Diamond Dogs thing is great. Good.
And Brendan has that great line, like, grow up and get over it.
Yeah. Coach
Beard. I mean, Ted Lasso, like, I have no doubt, before season 2 comes, whenever that will be, I'll rewatch this show probably 2 times, I bet.
Yeah.
I will go through and watch them all again.
Yeah. I agree with you on the Keeley situation. I mean, Juno Temple's been such a revelation. Obviously, people have known her in other projects, and it's not like this show is blowing up, and what have you. But certainly, there's enough of people who loved it, and there was enough viewership to warrant a second season. And thank God, because I think Juno Temple has been such a fantastic watch this season with the character of Keeley, what she's done with her. Even when she confronts Hannah, remember, she was like all stuttering and nervous about Hannah when they first met earlier in the season. And then when she finds out that Hannah's been the one who sent that paparazzi to take pictures of her and Ted to try to break, try to mess with Ted and Jamie's relationship as coach and player, she tells her, straight up, if you don't tell Ted, I'm going to tell him. And then later, when she still hasn't told him, she calls her all kinds of names to try to motivate her to do it, and then you have that moment where she says, well, have you ever had to tell someone you've turned around on or you've cared about now, the terrible thing you've done? She's like, yeah, I did it. I took a crap in this girl's locker when I was 13 years old. I apologized about it. We got over it a week later. And it's that kind of thing that you really appreciate. Yeah, you call her crass. I just think she's a woman of the world who tells it like it is. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it made me appreciate her even more, which is why she's perfect for Roy, because Roy tells it like it is himself, but has a hard time negotiating his feelings. She helps him do that. I mean, when she came and held his hand and held his knee while he put his head, that was such a great moment. That's a moment of real connection and love. And I look forward to seeing what this relationship looks like in season 2. Because does Roy now become a coach because he can't play anymore?
See, I was thinking that. Like, I really hope we don't, because Brett Goldstein is also the story editor for the show. Now, for our audience that does not know the hierarchy of the way a television writing staff works, is you have your executive producers, then you have your story editor. So this is the person that is basically in charge of the writers, but they do report to the producers. They're not necessarily the head writer. So I really hope we don't lose him. They didn't necessarily tee him up to be a coach.
Right.
But they also hired Ted Lasso, a guy that had no experience. So
that's true. And they also hired Nathan. They promote Nathan in, I think, episode 10 or near the end of episode 9. He gets, it's the beginning of episode 10. Season finale. He gets promoted from equipment manager to assistant coach. And by the way, Nathan's got a mouth on him, doesn't he? When he thinks he's getting screwed over here, he lashes out at everybody around him.
The poor kid.
The poor kid's like, I just got a job with the team. I just want to, I'm an intern. Yes, so Nathan, I hope they confront that, because Nathan isn't clean either. Nathan's got some Tourette's of the mouth with some of the stuff that he's saying, for lack of a better term. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but he's got that kind of like, even he called her a shrew. That's your boss. It's like saying something like what's wrong with you? So that's got to be explored, I think, a little bit too, his anger. And so I hope they explore that. And by the way, Nick Mohammed does a fantastic job with Nathan playing. And Shannon, you and I know as actors, status stuff, right? I mean, he plays a great status game throughout this season, sometimes riding high, sometimes riding really low, but always negotiating and doing well no matter what status he is. And that's the mark of a damn good actor. And Nick Mohammed does great work in this throughout as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, do you have any critiques? Because I have one, and it's not a critique. It's a, I wonder why they made this choice.
Yeah, I would say the end moment of the entire look. First of all, them losing, and some of the soccer stuff, I would say that's a critique, because some of it looks really unrealistic, and by that I mean the way they've got players moving. You can tell it's staged stuff and coordinated stuff, and it doesn't look realistic. But that's you forgive it because it's a TV show. It's not really about trying to make it look as realistic on the pitch as possible. That kind of stuff, but also the last moment of the show where he spits his tea on her face. I really didn't like that, Shannon. It bothered me because it's 2020. Do we really need to see a white man spitting on a white woman's face like that? I just didn't think that was the right decision. But then again, you think about the fact that, well, she did some pretty terrible shit, and Ted forgave her. We haven't even mentioned that. The scene where Ted forgave her, I thought, was a really fantastic scene as well, because he got it, because he's going through a divorce. So he gets it that she's going through a divorce. And so people who are going through something similar have more patience and forgiveness for each other, because they've had some pretty terrible experiences themselves. But I still didn't like that end moment. I got it in retrospect, but I didn't like it initially. What about you? What critique do you have?
I understand that point.
Yeah.
And to go back for 1 second, just because you made me think of it.
Oh, sure.
A lot of the show has been about people using other people.
Yeah, true.
And the sort of the victims' reactions to that. Like Roy had a real problem with what he perceived as being used by Keeley.
Yes.
Like, he was very upset by that.
Right.
But this is a guy who's also growing. This is a guy who's a work in progress. And then you see how Ted pretty much quickly, like, I get it. Let's get past it. Like we've got something bigger to focus on. Right. An interesting thing that they did, and I don't remember if this was episode 9 or episode 10, but it's when Roy gives up the captainship to Isaac.
Yeah,
that was an interesting choice, because Isaac and Colin have been they've been characters way out on the periphery.
Yeah.
These are guys that were essentially, at the beginning at least, their function was to be Jamie's flunkies.
You're right.
And then they eventually kind of stood up for themselves and chose not to follow his marching orders.
Right.
Why Roy gave the captainship to Isaac? So I'm like, this is a guy who the audience has a little bit of a relationship with, but why not give it to Danny? Why not or Sam? Yeah, why not give it to these guys that the audience knows better? So I'm assuming we're going to get to know Isaac and probably Colin better in season 2.
Yeah, and that might be the reason why they did it. Also, maybe, having a black captain of a Premier League team, I think was a good step, in this, our 2020 world and beyond. I thought it was a nice move, but I can't remember. And I'm telling you this, my honest truth. I think he gave the captaincy to someone else, or that sequence wasn't even in that last episode when I watched it the first time.
Is that right?
I'm just completely forgetting it. I don't know, but I don't remember that sequence in the final episode where they're throwing the captain band to each other. But it really worked. It was so funny because, when Roy takes the captaincy band and walks out and says, this is why it's hard to love you, right? And Lasso says to Coach Beard, you caught that, right? And he goes, yep, he loves you. That kind of stuff. I mean, it was really, we should mention that too. Brendan Hunt and Ted Lasso's chemistry is fantastic. Coach Beard and Ted Lasso just have great dochemistry throughout this. I mean, even when Coach Beard's not talking to him and moving across the pitch, across the field away from him, because he doesn't want to sit Roy. Ted Lasso doesn't want to sit Roy. All of that was very funny. And then the conversations at the bar. And look, Brendan Hunt is an interesting actor, right? We've seen him do his stage stuff. We've seen him do, because we know him personally.
We've seen him do charades.
We've seen him do charades. Yes, absolutely. But some of Brendan's humor is to shock. And I don't mean shock like, oh, it's shocking this moment happened. It's to like, that scream in the bar is that kind of Brendan Hunt humor. And it works because Brendan Hunt can pull that off. Not a lot of actors can pull that moment off and still seem charming or endearing or someone you want to get to know. But Brendan has that ability to do that. So that was kind of Brendan's acting going on there, putting some of his own comedy into it. So I really enjoy it. Was like discovering Brendan all over again as an actor and as an artist this whole first season. So that was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, and I don't know how well he knows Jason Sudeikis. Like, right. My guess is that they have known each other for quite a while. Hence, Brendan being one of the co-creators. Right. But there's a thing that happens when you have two people who have history. Now, some actors are good enough that they can convey that with their talent. Right. But a lot of times, when you see two people who just have this. And I'm thinking specifically with Brandon and Jason Sudeikis because a lot of it is just unsaid. A lot of it is just looks. I mean, I love the movie Serendipity. Yeah, there are moments between John Cusack and Jeremy Piven that I'm like, these guys have known each other for 30 years, and you can tell in that moment. I think Sudeikis and Brendan had quite a few of those. Certainly,
I agree with you 1,000%. And we'd be remiss not to mention Hannah Waddingham, her journey as well, but also Ted Lasso's journey. Right? I mean, this is right after the divorce. This is or the divorce papers have been signed. This is right after sleeps with Sassy. And there's 8, 9, and 10 is him kind of coming back to normal and figuring out how to negotiate his life now post divorce. And I think Jason Sudeikis, honestly, dude, if they could give him an Emmy or at least a nomination for this, he deserves it. The work he does throughout this whole season of playing a character that could easily fall into caricature is incredible. The tightrope he walks, it's easier it's harder than people think to walk a tightrope of a character like this, to make him believable, to make him charming, to make him layered, and to make him someone that you do want to hear more from and not be annoying with his constant positivity.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult thing to make a broad character realistic.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of times you do fall into the caricature. You fall into the sort of sketch side of it. He is threading the needle incredibly well. And a lot of times those bigger characters can become irritating quite quickly.
Yeah.
And at least for me, that never happened.
Yeah. I agree. Any thoughts on the final decision? Did you love the kind of bad news bears kind of rocky ending where they don't stay up? They actually are going to get sent down to the lower division or to the second highest division there, the championship, to try to compete, to try to come back out. Because Ted says, well, do you get promoted? Yeah, you get promoted. All right, well, let's get ourselves a promotion. That looks good on any resume. And let's try and win the whole damn thing. That's very major league-ish, right? What he says, win the whole effing thing. Having Ted say that, it's going to be interesting. And I think this is a smart move by the creators, in my opinion, because when you go to the lower divisions, the budget at those stadiums is a lot smaller. The stadiums are smaller. The players who are playing are of lower talent for the most part. So it's going to save them some money to not have to look like they're going to these massive places like Liverpool or Manchester when they're playing these games. So this is going to be interesting. And it's a way to explore England a bit more too, depending on what teams they include in this championship division, what areas of England they're going to explore. Because there's so many great so many fun football clubs that just can't hit the heights like they used to in the past, that they could explore the history of, which will be fun in the second season if they do that.
Yeah, they have kind of set themselves up for 2 more seasons. That they'll get promoted points at the end of season 2, and then they'll ostensibly win at the end of season 3. I mean, and I think that's sort of a minimum, depending on how many stories they have to tell, how far you can take the characters.
Right.
Because this seems like a show, thus far, at least by the writing, is I think they will do a Seinfeld. They're like, we want to do this many, and then we're out. You don't want to overstay your welcome, because that's where those broad characters can become caricatures.
Yes.
And I can't wait, like because they didn't really explore the soccer hooligan culture at all.
Yeah.
I think that's right that's fertile comedic ground right there.
Yeah, well, certainly we saw some of that with some of the characters in the bar, the anger, the frustration. But yes, they weren't what they call yabos, the bald, skinhead type guys who are like beating people over with pipes and sticks, which does not happen as often as it used to, obviously, anymore. You can go to these stadiums, you can go see these films. They try to make it as family friendly as possible. They've made a very concerted effort in England and in other countries to make going to football stadiums a little more of a family thing to do. So they try to weed those situations out, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that there aren't still what they call firms or fan groups or fan fan collectives that for the teams that get together occasionally and have these fights and scrapes and what have you. So yeah, it could be something they could explore. Another thing to explore, Shannon, and they might set themselves up for 5 seasons, is if they go into European football. If they go and qualify for the next and get promoted, obviously, into the next division, then they've got to play through the whole thing in the 3rd season to get to maybe win the title or come close to winning the title. But if they land in the top 4, then we're talking about Champions League football, which means European League, which means bigger players will want to come play for your team. So how will this work once they start bringing in more higher end players? And I don't think we've seen the last of Jamie after the end where he's holding the Army figure. I think he's going to try to push to come back and play for Ted Lasso.
100%. I think Jamie Tartt ends up in a Richmond jersey, 100%.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, real quick, Shannon, before we wrap up here, we're just over 30 minutes. Overall, how do you feel about the first season of Ted Lasso?
I mean, I can't give it a 10 out of 10, but I'll give it a 9.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000%. I agree with you. I think a 9 out of 10 is absolutely right. I mean, I might even veer to a 9.5 because I just have a very, very, very sweet spot in my heart for it because A, it's a very good comedy. B, it's actually damn good and charming in this crazy world of tension and rivalry and tribalism going on right now. And C, it really does a great job of promoting the sport of football here in the States. Even Roy's comments about American football where he dominate are so out of the realm of truth nowadays because the American game is so much better than it used to be. But it would be interesting to see them explore that too. So the fact that they put all of that in here, it really is a love letter to the sport of football, but really a love letter to human beings and relationships and negotiating things in your life through different stages and different times and different ages of your life, from the older Ted Lasso to Roy, who's a little bit younger, to Jamie Tartt, who's even younger, and all of that. And then, of course, with Keeley and with Rebecca, with Hannah Waddingham's character. So all of this is explored throughout, and I think it's a genuinely awesome show and a rarity in the world of sitcoms, and it deserves accolades and hopefully nominations for awards. May not win them, but damn, it deserves nominations for awards. And maybe the best thing I've seen on Apple Plus TV, in my opinion, so far that they've released.
Agreed. And I definitely think you've talked me into a 9.5. I mean, I am struggling to remember, and this always happens when we do these, that my mind, my brain just empties out. I'm like, best comedy ever. But I am struggling to think of another comedy, at least in the past 12 months, that I have enjoyed as much as Ted Lasso. I mean, it is an easy 9.5. And I can't wait to see where they're able to take these characters. It kind of seems like the sky's the limit right now. Yeah,
absolutely. And we look forward to it just as much as Shannon does. All right, well, let us know what you thought about Ted Lasso's first season, maybe the episodes 8, 9, and 10, or the entire season itself. Let us know in the comments section below. Remember to like this video as well, and to promote it on your social media. Share it, put it out there, because when you share one of our videos on your social media, you're telling your friends and family that you approve of this content, you approve of this review, and maybe they'll come aboard and watch more reviews here from the Outlaw Nation. Shannon, how can people find you? And thanks so much for coming aboard this Ted Lasso train with me, brother.
Of course. It was an absolute pleasure, Johnny. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung. on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. As always, you can catch me every week with Johnny and our fellow Geek Buddy, Mike Vogel, on the Geek Buddies. And yeah, I actually have if you're interested in my acting, I have a new comedy reel up on my IMDb. So if you just look Shannon McClung up on the Internet Movie Database, imdb.com, I got a new comedy reel there, and it's got some stuff from this past season, my stuff from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and the Goldbergs.
There you go. Do all of that, ladies and gentlemen. Please follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram if you haven't yet. And, of course, subscribe to the channel down below. We just crossed 14,000 subscribers, marching towards 15,000 subscribers. Come aboard the train. Come aboard the Outlaw Nation train. Let's build this nation out bigger and bigger. And more content is coming down the road as well, reviews just like this. All right, take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you next time with another review here on the Outlaw Nation. Be well. Diamond Dogs!